What's up, everybody? It's KEV. Invincible Part 2 featuring Sandy Hodja is out now, and I wanted to show you guys how Sandy and I made the song. So I've opened up the project file and let's get right into it. So the first thing that you'll hear in the intro is this main melody, which is being filtered down. It's actually two synths playing at once. This Gladiator, super saw kind of lead synth, and this bell layer, which is just a Nexus bell. And those two are filtered down and compressed just a little bit, and they sound like this. And then there's the piano, which is playing the root note of the underlying chord. The main drums are still filtered down, so there's a lot less impact than later on in the song when they are not being filtered down. Also added a few little effect sounds like this reverse brass sound and just another downlifter, which is leading us into the first verse. So altogether the intro sounds like this. So in the first verse we have the bass, which is a wide saw but filtered down a lot. I just used this sample that I found on Splice, which was already very wide. Took out even more of the high end. I also added this synth, which is always playing the third of the chord, which is implied. So those two together make the chords for the verse. As I've mentioned in the intro, this is Sandy Hodja singing. Once again, I've worked a couple of times with her already. And here is the effect chain that I used, starting with a de-esser. I've also added the decapitator, but the mix is on 6%, so it's basically just adding a little bit of harmonics, just makes it a little bit thicker. I love this plugin. It's amazing for shaping the tone of basically everything. Just boosting the high end a little bit, 1.5 dB on this band and another 1.5 dB for the very top end, which is the 10K and above. Also some soothe. Then some more EQs, a little bit of RVox. This compressor, which also works really nice on vocals if you're going into a bit more of an aggressive style. Ableton compressor, more EQ, more 10K boost, standard low pass. And also this preset in the Pro Audio DSP, DSM. It's kind of like a multi-band compression. So I just picked this preset and adjusted the threshold, and it's mostly taking out some of the mids and some of the harsh S's. So that's how the vocals were processed. Now let's give it a listen.
Deep in the dark, down on my knees, I've seen things that you wouldn't believe. I was lost until I found that I'm invincible. Nobody gon' bring me down.
The next part is the build-up, which is introducing the main lead from the drop. It's filtered down at first and also going through a lot of reverb. Also added this little arpeggio, which is just massive with the square wave, with the saw waveform. Also added this little string sample, which adds a lot of tension. Added this tubular bell, the brass vocal sample, which is Sandy's voice, but I used this plugin manipulator to pitch it down 12 semitones, and also added this frequency modulation, the white noise sample from Invincible, riser, which is just a saw in serum being pitched up and going through some reverb, and also this sample of a crowd cheering, which gives like the first bar of the build up a lot more impact.
Bring me down. Here we go.
And of course, leading us into the drop, the original vocal sample from Invincible Part 1. Here we go.
Here we go. I'm invincible. Nobody gonna bring me down.
Okay, so that's the first drop. Here we have the lead sound, which was also introduced in the build-up. Let's take a look at how that was done. Made from a sample called Bell Step. Let's have a look at this sample. Okay, like some little bell sample that is going through a lot of distortion, mostly, and also filtering it down just a little bit in the very high end before that, so that it doesn't get too harsh. Yeah, then of course took out the low end, some more of the very, very top end, this little EQ. Why the hell did I boost the sub bass 1 dB? It wasn't intentional. Then this is going through the reverb, which is being automated to fill all the gaps, as we can see here. Leading up into the next note, once the next note hits, the reverb is on 0% wet again. Supported by these chords, basic super saw, and this piano, which is playing the chords as well. Brass sample. And in the second half of the first drop, there's some small elements being added, like this offbeat reggae-like guitar and this tubular bell again from the build-up, and of course the offbeat claps as well. That leads us to the B drop.
Bring me down. That I'm invincible. Nobody gonna bring me down.
So here we have the same lead layers as we had in the intro. This time around they're not being filtered down. I'm also adding this arpeggio, playing this pattern. Let's have a quick look at the MIDI, playing the pentatonic of the scale. Then there's the piano, which is playing this pattern of always alternating between the bass note and the chord in the right hand. This also worked great in Invincible and a lot of my other glitch shop songs that are around 100 BPM. It's a no-brainer. This pattern works perfectly well for this kind of stuff. What is this? Okay, this is also just one of the vocal samples from Sandy's vocal with a lot of reverb. And this is just adding some atmosphere and some space to this song. And now we're going for the breakdown.
Bring me down.
Clock sample. Okay, so we have this string sample again from the build-up, which is adding tension. Vocal sample that I found on Splice happened to fit this chord progression perfectly. I think it adds a really nice atmosphere. And this Invincible choir thing, more vocal chops, and of course the chords. So this middle part is very similar to the first drop, but obviously the drums are going for a 4 to the floor pattern instead of the kick snare thing. And I also added a few little elements to make it more interesting, like for example this muted funky-ish guitar. Vocal sample, which is being filtered up and was also inspired by the middle part of the first part of Invincible. Choir vocal sample from the breakdown is also still playing. And most of the other elements in this part are just variations of parts that have already been introduced in the song, like the lead from the first drop, but filtered down, this kind of stuff. Now we're heading into the second verse, which is also acting like a build-up. I've added a lot of elements to make it more exciting than the first verse and build-up. So let's give it a listen.
Was fading away. I'm not gonna make it to the end of the day. I was lost until I found that I'm invincible. Nobody gonna bring me down.
Invincible.
Yeah, so there's this little vocal sample, which is also, of course, heavily inspired by the first part of Invincible, typing Invincible into some random website that does text-to-speech. And then I've warped it just a little bit to fit the timing of the song, added some OTT. So what I did for the second drop was switching around the first half of the first drop and the second half of the first drop. The first half of this drop is very, very similar to the second half of the first drop. So I'm basically throwing in all of the elements that have been introduced for this very last part of the drop, trying to make it as big and exciting as possible.
Invincible. Nobody gonna bring me down.
Invincible.
I'm invincible. Nobody gonna bring me down. That I'm invincible. Nobody gonna bring me down.
So for the outro, I added this little guitar riff, very basic. It's actually this guitar right here, which I bought secondhand for like $100 or something. Nylon string guitar, has a really warm sound to it, which I kind of like. And it's very imperfect, I should say. But for this kind of stuff, it's really cool because it adds a lot of character. Probably boosted a lot of high end on this one and took out a lot of low end. Also added this RC20 to add some noise and even some more imperfections in terms of pitch and wobble effects. And that's the song. So that's it for this video. I really hope you're enjoying the song. It's out now on all platforms. Make sure to check it out, and thanks to NCS for making it happen more than 6 years after the initial release of Invincible. Thanks to Sandy Hocha for the amazing vocals, and see you soon.